You speak both languages, and you can just choose which one you would like to use this morning. And French too. Well, French is not included in this session, with all due respect. Okay, please, Vivian.
Ta-da. Baruch Hashem, that I'm not expected to speak French as well. Good morning to everybody. Thank you, Dr. Shai, for inviting me, and good morning to all the other distinguished guests who are here to listen, and of course, those who are here to speak. I've been listening with great interest in both languages, and it's fascinating because we're all clearly in consensus. We all understand that we're here to talk about this issue of the demonization of Israel. And I'm going to suggest, in a manner that's consistent with, I'm serving the second prime minister. I was appointed 2.5 years ago. The first prime minister I served was Stephen Harper, and since October it's Justin Trudeau. And both have stated publicly and clearly that this issue of delegitimization and BDS actually has an awful lot to do with rank anti-Semitism. The rank is my editorial edition, not theirs. They just stick to the term anti-Semitism. And I think that it's very important that we talk about what we're talking about. I'd like to begin by recognizing a very important motion that was passed in the Canadian House a few months ago. Now, a motion, as many people have pointed out to me, doesn't have legal force, but it certainly has moral strength and fortitude. And the motion stated thus, and it was overwhelmingly passed in the tripartisan House. Quote, given Canada and Israel share a long history of friendship, as well as economic and diplomatic relations, the House reject the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, which promotes the demonization and delegitimization of the State of Israel, and call upon the government to condemn any and all attempts by Canadian organizations, groups, or individuals to promote the BDS movement, both here at home and abroad. Very, very strong language. So what the Parliament was saying was we reject BDS, but what they really, there was a significant criticism of was their call to condemn groups that embrace this philosophy or approach, because that was presented as a constraint on free speech. The reality is it's not. In Canada, we have a balance, and we look at whether or not the social whole, the collective whole, is in any way infringed by an individual's right to say whatever they wish. It's a very different approach to free speech from the American. So that's kind of context for Canada's position and policy on this issue. But I have to say, as a Canadian, and as a Canadian Jew from Toronto, where we have 250,000 Jews living in that city, I am personally and professionally very disturbed by what I see happening on the ground and the dissonance between a motion or a statement like this and what is going on. 250,000 Jews in Toronto. It's not a city of 10 million, it's a city, the greater Toronto area, of about 6 million, 5 or 6 million. That's a lot of people. It's a city in which I grew up. It's a city in which my 2 daughters who are of university age are afraid to go to university. And that's not a trivial concern, and it's not an exaggerated concern. It's a real concern, because what is going on our campuses is beyond frightening. And what is going on in our streets is beyond frightening, and this is Canada. So there's a clear gap between what's said in a motion and what's going on in the street. And what we have to ask is why? Why? Why is there this gap? Why are my kids afraid to go to school? You know, on the campuses in Canada, I think we have 15 to 18 full-blown BDS delegitimization resolutions. Full-blown. If that was America, in Canada we go by the 10% rule because we're 10% of the population, 10% of everything, the wealth. We have a lot more ice than them, but if that was America, there would be 150 to 180 campuses, and people would be going crazy. And no one's paying attention. So I suggest people look. Several of the previous speakers have made reference to unions and reaching out to unions. I got lots of work for you to do in Canada, because we have a very different culture from America, and our unions are very active, and it's a very European approach. And some of the things that have gone on are very concerning.
Learn about it from your teachers.
I'll teach you more. So the question again, and I'm going to keep repeating it because I'm going to fall back on my training as a litigator. I was a litigator for 24 years, and I listened carefully to the previous speakers. Minister Adan made the comment that, Israel should not be on the defensive. Israel should be on the attack. And as a litigator, that's what you do all the time, right? But before you can go on the attack, you have to sit down and really, really know the other side's case. You have to know it much better than you know your own. That's what a good litigator does. And what is the attack? Who is attacking and why? And I think, as others have suggested here, there's a lot of work to be done. But it does distill to one concerning trend. And the trend is that in polite company, if you don't join the aggressive demonization and pile-on of Israel, then there's something wrong with you. Because Israel, it is accepted, represents the most egregious human rights violations, the most egregious behavior internationally. It is a brutal, militaristic, fascist apartheid state. So if you do not join in the condemnation, then you are not a progressive, open-minded, fair, and intelligent person. That's what's happened. And that's what's happened on our campuses. Because I can tell you, the Jewish kids are threatened and intimidated. Not the Russian kids, not the Chinese kids. Canada is the most multicultural society in the world. There is one group of students that is threatened and intimidated on campuses. And I suggest to you, they're the canaries in the mine shaft, and it's not fun. I'm going to close with a comment about the fact that, Toronto, and I think, listen, Canada's a great country, so is Toronto, don't get me wrong. I was just there, it's beautiful. But, we also have to be honest about what's going on. We have to see what's going on, not pretend that it's all kind of fuzzy and ineffective and harmless, because it's not. In 2005, on the University of Toronto campus, the largest, and if I may say so, best university in Canada, yes, I went there, and it's very, very highly regarded and competitive, even, believe it or not, Americans in the room, with some of your best. And the University of Toronto in 2005, the first Israel Apartheid Week was launched. And the proud producers of that were, of course, Toronto Jews. And they are very proud that it has spread to many, many campuses. I think we're at 55 in the world. But the biggest and strongest is in Toronto. If that can happen in a city like Toronto, with an engaged and strong community, with an enlightened population, if that kind of attitude towards Israel and Jews, because I think we're all in it together, can get that sort of traction and acceptance, then I think it behooves every single person, regardless of partisan identification, because I do not think it is a partisan issue, fundamentally, to look very carefully at what is going on here and why. And I think that until we are prepared to say very clearly what the issue is, that we will never, ever combat it. It's not about money. It's not about how effective the Hasbara is. It's about whether or not you know your case and you know what you're addressing on the other side. Thank you very much.
תודה. Thank you very much, Vivian. Michael?